Imagine living in a world where everything you know about yourself, your freedom, even your body, is shaped by invisible systems of power, where madness, prisons, sexuality and knowledge are not merely personal or natural phenomena, but social constructs meticulously maintained and regulated by institutions. Michel Foucault spent his life uncovering these hidden structures. He revealed that society controls people not only through laws or violence, but through subtle forms of knowledge, discourse, and normalized behavior. By the end of this episode, you'll understand his radical ideas, why he remains one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century, and how his insights continue to shape debates in sociology, philosophy, politics, feminism, queer theory, and beyond. Once you hear this, you'll never look at institutions, rules, or social norms the same way again. Michel Foucault was born into a notable provincial family in France. His father, Paul, was an eminent surgeon who hoped Michel would follow in his footsteps. But young Michel's interests lay elsewhere. After a mixed early academic record, he excelled at a Jesuit college, demonstrating an early affinity for languages, philosophy, and rigorous thought. He later entered into the École Normale Supérieure in Paris, the gateway for France's intellectual elite, where he encountered some of the most influential thinkers of the time. He struggled with acute depression, which deepened his fascination with psychology, consciousness, and the human mind. He later joined the French Communist Party under the influence of Marxist philosopher Louis Althusser, but left after 3 years due to issues with the Soviet authoritarianism. Mentors like Maurice Merleau-Ponty exposed him to existential and phenomenological philosophy, blending the study of human existence with structural analysis of society. He earned degrees in both psychology and philosophy, laying the groundwork for his later work, examining how society shapes thought, identity, and knowledge. During this period, Foucault also began to explore the personal and political dimensions of life, forming ideas that would later underpin his radical critiques of power and institutions. His contributions are best understood through his major works, which explore the interconnections between knowledge, power, and society. First was Madness and Civilization, which is the translation, of course, and it examines how societies define and treat madness. Rather than viewing mental illness as an objective or universal phenomenon, he revealed that definitions of madness are historically and culturally constructed. He traced the evolution of asylums, hospitals, and psychiatric institutions, showing that the treatment of mad reflected social norms and the mechanics of control rather than compassion. Public shaming, confinement, and medicalization served as tools to categorize and exclude those who did not conform. So the key takeaway here is madness is not merely a medical condition. It is a social category used to enforce norms and discipline behavior. His next work was The Order of Things, where he analyzed the underlying frameworks of knowledge in different historical periods. These frameworks dictated what could be said, thought, and understood within a culture at a given time. He argued that knowledge is never neutral. It is always shaped by cultural, historical, and institutional context in which it exists. What seems natural or self-evident in one era may appear bizarre or illogical in another. So, the key takeaway here is that truth and knowledge are historically contingent, constructed through complex systems of thought not discovered as eternal absolutes. And then came the archaeology of knowledge. The methodology was explored of studying knowledge itself. He argued that discourse, structured language, statements and practices creates reality. Rather than focusing on individuals, Foucault examined the statements themselves as the building blocks of knowledge. This approach highlighted how societies create, regulate and control what can be expressed, who can speak and which ideas are deemed valid. So the takeaway here is that understanding knowledge requires analysing the systems and rules that govern discourse, not just the people who produce it. And then it was Discipline and Punish, where he traced the evolution of punishment and social control, from public executions to modern prisons, he showed how power moved from overt, brutal displays to subtle, pervasive systems of surveillance and discipline. The key concepts were panopticism, the idea that constant invisible surveillance encourages self-discipline and people regulate themselves before they feel they might always be watched. And then micropower. Power operates through institutions, schools, hospitals and bureaucracies, not just governments. The takeaway here is that power is omnipresent, shaping behaviour without overt coercion. And then it was the history of sexualization, how sexuality is socially constructed and regulated, including the concept of biopower, the way states control population through regulations of body, health, reproduction and sexuality. He argued that sexuality is not a natural, purely biological phenomenon, but disciplined and categorized by cultural and institutional forces. Foucault also examined self-care and ethics in ancient societies, showing how individuals can navigate, resist and shape social norms. The key takeaway here is that freedom and sexuality are deeply intertwined with social control, but knowledge of those systems can empower resistance. Foucault was not only a theorist but also a political actor. He founded the Prison Information Group to explore abuses in the penal system and actively supported marginalised communities, including homosexuals and prisoners. He believed that knowledge and power are inseparable, and that understanding these systems is essential to resisting oppression. His activism demonstrated that philosophy, for him, was not abstract, it was deeply engaged with real-world struggles and injustices. His work has faced criticism, though, for historical inaccuracies and selective evidence, overgeneralization of social phenomena, ambiguous or dense writing style, the rejection of Enlightenment values while implicitly relying on them. Yet the volume and diversity of his influence across philosophy, sociology, feminism, queer theory, literary theory, cultural studies and beyond underscore the enduring impact of his ideas. His work does illuminate a few things though. How institutions define normality and deviance, how power operates subtly through culture, media, schools and hospitals, how knowledge is never neutral but a tool of influence, how individuals can resist systemic control through awareness and ethical practice. Every conversation about identity, governance or social norms carries traces to his insights. He teaches us to see hidden structures that shape our lives and to question who benefits from truths presented as natural. His legacy is a profound reminder that knowledge and power are intertwined, that freedom is negotiated within societal structures, and that awareness of these systems can transform the way we live, think and act. To think like Foucault is to see beyond appearances, question authority and challenge the frameworks that govern our lives.